comments, and I'm very excited to join all of you guys to get to know Eric and Rory, of course. I have a feeling this is going to be a really high energy Q&A session. So hi guys, how are you?
Hello, yes, live, Goda. I'm very, very excited to be live. I actually did that entire session that you saw there with me in one take.
Yeah,
So I
crazy.
definitely way prefer being live and engaging with the audience. So yeah, really keen to get some questions from you.
Absolutely. And Eric, again, also thank you so much for a session. Rory, maybe you should start a YouTube channel. If you can pull that off with a one take session, I can promise you that you will have amazing career on
I
YouTube.
have I have about 10 YouTube channels. I work for
Oh my.
Microsoft as a principal cloud advocate. And as a result, we have 50 million developers that call Microsoft home. So definitely, if you want to go to the VS Code or the Azure, you can just search for me. And then you'll see some of the material there. I also do cloud material, so Azure Cloud, and also programming. I'm a Java developer for 20 years now. And semantic kernel is just absolutely fascinating because it feels like a relational database, but it's a little bit more. It's like a relational database you can talk to, and I love that experience.
Okay, fantastic. So let's then jump right into the specific questions, okay? So, Rory, this one goes to you. So, can we use autogen using semantic kernel?
I would love to know what autogen is, though. I'm not too
Okay.
sure what autogen is, though, so I can't actually state. Maybe we can ask someone to explain it,
Mhm.
or maybe I can just quickly search for it.
So while you
And
search, then I would say ask Learn with Girish to elaborate on this question a little bit more. And then, okay, fixing the situation. Hi, Rory. Comes from Kiev. I've been using prompt engineering for the last 8 months to build applications. I'm finding it challenging to present my new skills to employers. What are good avenues to do that? Especially,
okay,
I
so
think you coming from Microsoft, this is kind of, I guess, targeted question.
it's definitely something that I have the perfect answer for. So let me just go back to the autogen question.
Oh,
I
you
haven't
found.
used it, but it is an orchestrator. It is from Microsoft as an orchestrator, but I haven't used it though. So I'm not going to comment on that though. The second question was, how do you get started to create a portfolio? We have a portal called Awesome AZD with 70 plus templates, and we've got a lot of our partners. We've got VMware and a lot of our other partners creating templates there that you can go in there. You can go to Awesome AZD. And the template that I demoed in my session was actually a Awesome AZD template. So if you want to create a template, you need to have a valid ecosystem. And then you can go in and then you can get assistance. It's like also saying, how do you know if a developer is equipped? How many stars do they have? What is their GitHub contribution? So definitely go into Awesome AZD, start contributing, ping me, let me play with your template, and then hopefully I can amplify it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the question, I want to go back to the question about, the career. Let me just find. Do you remember the question I just popped? I'm sorry. I'm just going through a sea
You
of
asked, how do you get
questions.
started?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what is
so
the avenue to do that?
well, you need to understand also that a developer is based on two main channels or pillars. One, you have the self, and that's education, relevance, and experience, and the other you have the social or the human experience, and that's mentorship and also community. So I use Microsoft as the arm in my on my pillars, but you need to have education. So that would be your formal education, your degree, or your high school. Then your experience. So that would be, oh wow, I can see what's coming up, and then you can kind of predict it. But then relevance. So it's important to understand relevance and to understand that this is a domain that none of us actually understand. This is so new that you have to go and say, okay, I want to be relevant. I want to start documenting and reading up on that though, and then have joy. If you can find and you can tap into the joy of this generative AI, I guarantee you, you're going to find a way to create a career in it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this, inspiring answer. Okay, so Eric, very specific question. What you showed, is this supported only with OpenAI?
No, so all that was running locally on my machine. There was no server calls at all. It was all happening on the MacBook Pro with local LLM, local Chroma database, local everything.
Fantastic. Okay, and question to both of you, which comes from Keith Newton. And Keith has also like elaborate long questions, so we will see if we get to that. But this one is very specific. So, hi, Eric and Rory. Hi, Keith. What is the work you both have done in digital accessibility?
That's a good question. So I have achondroplasia, dwarfism. And one of the things that we've been doing is looking at, I'm an accessibility advocate for Microsoft, is can OpenAI help with accessibility? The WCAG standard, it's detailed, it's mature. So what we did is we created two channels to look at accessibility. One is to solve the accessibility issues before they get created. And to do that, we've created a coaching application in beta that is going to go and help it. Exactly what I showed you with semantic kernel. It consumes information and does it. Two, and I'll put the URL there. We have an application that can go in and it uses some OpenAI prompts to go in and fix the accessibility issues. So what it does,
Wow.
it'll scan your HTTP files, React or plain HTML, and then it'll go in there and say, wow, okay, we found an issue. It uses the X linter, so which is the de facto standard using X rules. And then it goes in and says, I found an issue. Now, OpenAI, can you go and fix the issue? And we scan tens of thousands of websites internally to actually go in there. And the novelty is that you can do it on a PR. So as the PR hits, you go in there and you say, wow, whoa, I have an issue there, but I'll solve it for you. You still need the human being to actually go in and 4-hour principle it though. But we are really, really excited around the ability to give people the opportunity to fix their issues automatically. Caveat, accessibility is complicated and it does still need humans.
Thank you. Eric, do you have anything to add to this
I would just say in
question?
terms of like my experience with accessibility, I spent most of my career up to this point as a software developer, working mostly in the front end, and I've worked with a lot of banks and financial institutions and designed so many little drop down widgets and form inputs of all sorts of weird types that you need for banking stuff to be accessible. And I think trying to figure out how to integrate some of the new tooling that we have with generative AI with some of the older approaches to accessibility will be super interesting. I haven't had a chance to really explore it yet, but I would love to see what happens if you can start hooking up like uh, generative AI to some text to speech stuff that actually sounds pretty good, and maybe piping that into a screen reader. I think there's so much stuff we could try to do that would be really cool.
Yeah, the sky is the limit. And what we like to say on our podcast is that AI is the worst it will ever be. And from this point, it's just going to be more accessible, more fascinating. Okay, so now it's going to be like I will try to do my best to go to the questions. So we have Darth Looper, and thank you, Darth, for being super engaged and posting so many questions, and also talking with community. Love seeing your contributions. So, okay, so how do we approach keeping creativity and freedom in AI while protecting against abuse and breaching? Rory, do you want to jump into this one?
Yeah, we have at Microsoft, if
Oh, I guess we lost Rory. I think this is like one wrong click away and Rory is gone. So we will wait for Rory to join. Ellen, Eric, do we still have you here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so do you want to jump into this question maybe?
I mean, I can try. I'm no expert in that part of the field yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some really interesting tools that are coming out now to sort of try to address some of that. There's a really cool one from a company called Lakera. It's called Lakera Guard, and it actually like you feed the prompt and the messages coming in into that program first, and it basically, I think, uses several different LLMs to analyze what's in there and see like, hey, this has a prompt injection in it, or hey, this is exposing PII or things like that. It's super cool. If you saw the Gandalf game that came out a while back that was super popular about prompt injection, it's the company that built that. It's their like underlying tool. It's pretty cool.
Fantastic. And Rory, so I guess one wrong click and we were gone. You were just about to share with
Yes.
us.
This is what happens when you do StreamYard, because your
Oh,
browser
no.
is dependent on that. But so at Microsoft, we have a responsible AI portal, and we have a checklist you can do. And we also have tools that can go in there and analyze your model according to our responsible AI principles. We have responsible AI now on 1.6 billion people's PCs. So on my PC here, I have the Windows Copilot, which was built with responsible AI. And that was rolled out along with the M365, the Microsoft Dynamics, the Bing Chat responsible AI. And all of those use the same principles, but you can get the same tool set to go and check your LLM model, though, that we are right now rolling out to 1.6 billion people. So it's a little bit of bragging rights, though. But if we're going to do that, then it has to be responsible. So yeah, so definitely go check our responsible AI portal, though, our tool sets, and our also checklists.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I dropped in a chat, and I'm just going to you shared quickly with me the accessibility repo. So anybody, please click the link in the chat. Thank you, Rory, for that. Okay, so we have 5 more minutes, and I have this question from Darth Looper. So about Metaprompts. As someone who is very minded towards security and transparency, how do you see engines based on pre-compiled prompts, metaprompts, having a place in the everyday life of consumers? Whoever wants to start, Eric, do you have any point of view on this one?
Yeah, I guess I could talk a little, pontificate a little about it. So I think one of the things you have to think about if we're going to be dealing with like taking input and injecting that into some sort of prompt that we're then going to be piping into some other system is the same thing we've always had to worry about with any user input is like you can't trust user input. You have to, and then I guess now we also can't trust whatever comes back from the LLM. So you have like 2 layers of distrust you have to deal with now. And I think there's probably a whole industry or ecosystem to be built around like sanitizing and making the input and output from these things safe. And right now, I think it's kind of the Wild West. So right now, it's just sort of like you cross your fingers and hope that nothing breaks and try to, sandbox things where you can. But I think as we develop more, we'll start to find some tooling gets developed to help handle some of this stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I have another question for you. So again, accessibility in AI is key interest, and the comment goes like, I built 2 apps this year for accessibility using AI. How do you see accessibility being addressed using AI? It's a broad question, and we kind of like touched on that. But Eric, any pointers, any specific use cases?
I haven't actually. So I've been more exploring the like, can I make fun little apps like a DM app with AI recently, and I have not gotten to the can I make something that's actually like super helpful to someone in their everyday life. This might be helpful to a DM every once in a while, but not like it's something that's super important. And I feel like accessibility is something that requires a lot of intention and a lot of like really thinking about what you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve it, and actually going and talking with someone who you hope to benefit with that tool and actually like get their perspective and work with them closely with like user oriented design around like how are we going to build this thing. So me just hacking on it in my spare time might produce something kind of interesting, but probably not anything that useful. So
Thank you so much. I think it was like Keith. I'm just looking for a comment. Keith shared that he has built also like apps for his, I think, daughter, like our child, to actually prompt bedtime stories. Another exciting use case. Okay, so let's just one second. I have a question about Orchestrator, which I think everyone kind of was like, whoa. So are Orchestrator agents ever confused or dispatch the wrong agent to complete a task? If so, what steps can we take to ensure it is picked the right agent? How do you find out why it went wrong?
Okay, I'll go first.
Yes.
So what you're talking about is telemetry and testing. So one of the patterns is to get another AI to test that, because what you want to do is you want to have the common RAG pattern or Go orientated programming to have your meta prompt to get the customer or your client to ask that meta prompt, and then going through the process of the steps though. But it's a workflow, so you can actually go and check that workflow. And one of the industry moves is to have some degree of self check on that. You can actually ask the AI, please self check yourself, or you can use another model for that though. The difficulty comes in that the planner, for example, in semantic kernel, and as it progresses there, you're going to get tens of thousands of prompts of agents that you're going to be able to address them. And as the industry moves out there, we're going to find out that we're going to have one small little AI speaking to another big AI, speaking to another big AI, and speaking to another big AI. That's exactly what semantic kernel does. It's a smaller AI speaking to another big AI, though. And GPT-3, well, now GPT-4 also, is exactly that. So when we built it, we actually had access to the architecture, the underlying architecture. GPT-4 is a little bit more kind of hidden, but it's the completion model surrounded by a chat model, Instruct GPT. So already from the beginning with GPT-3, we had two models speaking to each other. Now with GPT-4, we've got probably a little bit more around that though. The same principle goes with a orchestrator. You need the ability for one model to govern and sidecar to another. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that is spot on. I don't think I could add much to that one.
Okay, thank you so much. A lot of questions are coming specifically for use cases. So, as for example, project manager, are there any tools inside these large language models that would help with managing a project? Any tools that you have off top of
Yeah,
your
we
head?
built one. It's called M365 Copilot, though. Literally,
Yes.
I've got it on Excel, I've got it on Project, I've got it on PowerPoint. I don't want to tell you a secret, but you know that PowerPoint that I sent you? It kind of was built with an LLM.
You just revealed the secret. Fantastic. Thank you
I
so
go in
much.
there and I say, okay, cool. This is what I want to talk about. Go create the slide deck. It will go and create the slide deck, and then I use DALL-E 3, some of those pictures, and it goes in and creates it though. I am spoiled for choice because I've got early access for that though. But I have more than 10 of those robots floating around my PC now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so I have a question for Eric. What are some key considerations for selecting an open source model when you are in the prototyping phase, especially in the context of AI? And this is very much also I would combine with a question from, I can't pronounce this username, I'm very sorry. What are trade-offs between large language models like GPT versus smaller large language models? For instance, I could use multiple small large language models or open source for each specific task, but there is large variability in token requests. So this is a lot. Eric,
Yeah.
any pointers here?
So when you're trying to pick a model to run locally, I think the first important thing to figure out is like how powerful is your machine, and if the answer is not very powerful, that's okay. It just means you're going to have to like start looking at simpler models and models that have been quantized more and models that are, you know, fine tuned a little bit more effectively, a little differently. The one that I shared earlier, the Orca Mini one, like I said, can run on a 2012 MacBook Pro pretty well. It's not the fastest because it's an old machine that just doesn't have a lot of resources to work with, but it works. And then there are, Mistral is pretty nice general purpose one that just came out recently. And then someone actually has released an Orca version of Mistral that's pretty cool. It can do a lot of stuff. It's really powerful. And then in terms of the difference between using like GPT-4 and these other LLMs, like real talk, GPT-4 is just super powerful for all general purpose stuff you need it to do. And it's like really good at every task pretty much you can think of. So it's going to be really, really good. And then the other stuff, you can make different models be really good at different things, but it's not going to be like just out of the box. You're like, oh, this is great and it works perfectly, because it doesn't work that way. It would be nice if it did, but we're not there yet. We will eventually probably get there, but right now you won't. In terms of using multiple models and stringing them together, it's super cool. There's this one called Nexus Raven, which is just totally fine-tuned on function calling. Like the only purpose it has is like you give it a list of these functions, and it's when it hears something, it says, "Oh, I need to call this function." So some people have been working on orchestrating a bunch of other LLMs using Nexus Raven as sort of a like a a puppeteer that it gets the request and it decides like, oh, it should go to this, and then it calls out to another LLM, does the stuff. To do that locally, you're going to have to be running multiple language models locally, which means you're going to need a really powerful machine or multiple machines that you can then send requests across your network, which can also happen. You can deploy stuff to places and do that too, but I don't know the cost of once it gets off your machine, to be honest. I've only been playing locally or with the GPT-4 API. So, but I think there's definitely a lot to explore there. And if you have the resources to run them and orchestrate them together locally, I would say go for it because it's super cool. There's this one tool called Open Interpreter that you also might want to look
Yes.
into that generates code for you in your terminal or in a Jupyter notebook or in just Python if you want to use it. And it's super cool. We're also working on adding some other sandboxing to it, like allowing it to spin up a Docker container every time it wants to run code. So you actually are like, insulated from what it's going to be doing, because obviously letting an LLM just run code on your machine is kind of like scary. I'm sure that there's some people that like cringed as soon as I said that, but it's pretty cool. And that's another fun one to play with. And you can actually get it to talk to other LLMs as well and start to sort of orchestrate things that way. And people are making some really cool stuff with it.
And I'm laughing because you mentioned Open Interpreter. I recently made a video about Open Interpreter, and one of the use cases, like I'm not a programmer, but like I'm learning on steroids right now. I used it to organize my computer files. But then I maybe realized that maybe GPT-4 is a little bit too expensive for this type of use case. But definitely, I think people should check it out. And there are some concerns, at the corporate level, but also incredible use cases. Okay, I have two very loaded questions. So I'm very curious. And people want, multiple people are voting for this question. Rory, any secrets or tips you can share about OpenAI API that aren't well known? Do you know anything about the Vision API? You can also ditch this. I just had to pop it up because people are rooting for this question.
So the Vision API, we actually we called it Project Florence, and Project Florence we used initially for accessibility. We used it to go in alt image. So when you go into Microsoft Word or PowerPoint and you go, please generate an image, we're using the Vision API behind it there. And we took that learning behind that and we helped build the DALL-E engines, because DALL-E needs to understand with the multimodal transformer, it needs to understand what's going on there. So we help train that. But now when you go to DALL-E 3, you can also go forward engineer from DALL-E 3 and then back engineer from ChatGPT. You can read and create and generate those images, though. So I think the biggest secret is if you use Microsoft Word right now, you're using the Vision API right now to go in and get those alt images, though. It goes a little bit further because the images now and the models can kind of read text and write text. This is only like a week old, and that's GPT 4V. It can read and write text. I sat with my son, 13-year-old today, and my daughter, 6-year-old, and I created a comic book, but with the text in the image with that. And then I read it back to them. I showed them, and they went, the world opened up to them because they understood that Vision now could read.
Yeah. This is like the moment you kind of get this like a click moment. That's it. There is no way back. When you join this type of conferences and you just go to deep rabbit hole. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this. I will sneak in one more question, but someone also comment. Sorry?
Can I add one little pro tip that some people might not know about with the OpenAI API. So if you have found that you're having trouble getting some of your system prompt instructions to be followed appropriately once you get like pretty far into the conversation, you've got a lot of messages floating around, it can actually help sometimes if you take it from being the first message in the array and pop it at the end and make it the very last thing that pops up. That can actually sometimes have this weird impact that makes the model like think about it more and use it. The other option is also to just at a certain point switch from system to user prompt on that, because right now user prompts are still like weighted a little more heavily, and then you can just sort of like force it to do what you were trying to get it to do. So, and I've learned that after experimenting a whole lot, building a music recommendation service that basically just runs your Spotify and keeps queuing up songs for you with the OpenAI API. So
This is so fun that you mentioned this. So both with Rory and yourself, talking about meta prompting, I just have to sneak this one here. I published 2 videos about Professor Synapse, and I don't know if you heard of it. This is really copy paste meta prompt into ChatGPT. You can add it to custom instructions. Full credit to Joseph Rosenbaum. He's part of our team. But in this prompt, there is a commands. And there's one command like /save. And if you do that, it also goes and summarizes and pulls what was the beginning, the middle, summarizes, and it's really extending. And we are working now on, vectorizing the whole memory as well. So exciting stuff. I'm actually very curious for both of you to check it out. This prompt kind of exploded. Sorry, break alarm. But it's more than 100,000 people using that, and we've been receiving incredible. So I think meta prompting is really the way to go, and as well as orchestrators. Okay, so coffee break. There is way more questions, so I think Rory, Eric, if you can stay and engage in the chat, that would be fantastic. Thank you for all the links. If there is anything you want to share with the audience, drop it to me and I will distribute that. But thank you for your energy and everything what you guys do. This is incredible.
yeah, thanks for listening to us.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thank
And cheers,
you.
everyone.